Hello, and welcome to the Anime Explorations podcast for October. My name is Alex.
I am Tora.
I'm David.
That works every time.
Why would you not warn us you were doing a voice?
I mean, it's October. I've done it the past couple October episodes, so aside from
You
the first
expect me to
episode.
remember how you talked a year ago?
I mean, it's the Halloween episode. Of course, I'm going to do a bit.
That's entirely fair. We can either keep this in or go from the beginning.
We are absolutely throwing it in. As the start of most episodes, we do a bit of conversation about what we're currently watching. As of this recording, we've just had the start of the new anime season for fall.
Woo!
I have a short list of shows I'm watching this year, or this season. One of them being the new Ranma 1/2, which is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, having fun with that.
Also watching Dan to Dan.
I have heard things about that one.
I am not watching Dan to Dan. I am watching the new season of Shangri-La Frontier.
Uh-huh.
I just started watching the show from the beginning.
Yeah.
I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, it's like super nice animation the whole way through, and it's nice having a show where there aren't really any like stakes involved aside from people playing video games, and
It's
whether
cute.
or not this one girl will actually ask her crush out or properly introduce herself.
I actually really love in the art for that show, they have this very subtle filter over the shading that makes it look like alcohol marker coloration, which is awesome.
Mhm.
It looks so good.
The thing I caught my attention about Dan to Dan. So I got introduced to the manga through the Manga Splaining podcast, which longtime listeners will know is one of the podcasts that inspired this one to exist. It was introduced by Deb Aoki, so that helped get me past some of the rougher bits in the first episode, I'll just say. But one of the things I will say I've noticed from it is, helped by the fact that it's on Netflix, I'm seeing it actually get some breakthrough through audiences that are into like speculative fiction and that sort of thing, but aren't necessarily into anime. So feels like a good sign for me, particularly since, again, those rougher bits normally are the kind of things that cause people to bounce off anime in the first place. The way that it is handled here, for this show, I guess it is something that is more overcomable in some respects for them. Also, it helps that we have another like solid banger opening from Creepy Nuts after Big Bang Born from Mashal earlier. Other than that, season 2 of MF Ghost, and Magi Lumiere Magical Girls Incorporated, which is on Amazon, which admittedly is probably not helping its visibility any, even for all the people who do have Prime. Where that's magical girls as workplace comedy. Again, I've been reading the manga of that, really liking it, and it's really well done here, with some good comedy as well.
That sounds fun.
Yeah.
Probably the trashy thing I'm watching this season though is Yakuza Fiancé.
Trashy in what respect?
In respect of like, this is so the premise of it is the main character is the daughter of a Yakuza family who is betrothed to one of the sons of another Yakuza family. And there is a degree of like trashy romance fiction to it in terms of romantic couple where there's kind of a degree of like little bit of a moderate degree of self-destructiveness on both sides, kind of degree of like edginess to it in terms of not like there's some abuse of like the guy is in the relationship, the male lead is a violent Yakuza guy. He's high school age, but he's still a violent Yakuza. Not like a Kazuma Kiryu stoic, but like almost kind of closer to a Majima, like teenage Majima. And what the female lead has decided to do basically is go, okay, I'm going to see if I can out Majima sort of thing.
All right.
So it's interesting. It's only 2 episodes in, so we'll see how things go. If there, I have not read the manga for this one. Other than that, I am moderate disappointment that season 4 of Thunderbolt Fantasy has not yet actually been picked up for distribution by Crunchyroll yet.
We angry.
Yes. You can't see it, but I'm doing my angry face.
We're all just frowning intently into the camera.
Yep. So, aside from Shangri-La Frontier, what else anything else new you're watching this season?
We are watching the new Ranma 1/2. Trying to figure out. Yes, I'm watching Do-Over Damsel Conquers the Dragon Emperor, because I also enjoy terrible romance. That one is... Honestly, so far, it's not outstanding. It's pretty troperific. It's not bad by most definitions.
It's kind of mid.
Like, our protagonist is currently physically aged, I think, 13, and she's engaged to a 19-year-old. And he personally believes that that's not enough of an age difference, but that's because he is, as an emperor, someone who is used to enormous age differences between husband and wife, since his father was 40 when his mother was 16 when they got married. So he has no idea how romance works. But he's a very good baker.
I'm so confused.
It's so confusing. Like, I'm not entirely certain this show is gonna, be able to keep me, because, it's come close a few times where I'm just like, yeah, I'm not gonna keep watching this. But it hasn't reached that point yet, but it may very well.
On a scale of 1 to call the cops, where are we at?
There haven't been any, fan servicey, shots that I'm really unfortunately used to in this sort of thing. So the fact that it's treating it visually, respectfully, and it's not trying to sexualize children,
Mm-hmm.
that earns a lot of consideration from me.
Isn't that sad that that's the baseline?
Please don't sexualize your kids.
Okay.
Yeah.
No other anime for me. I've gotten back into my K-drama obsessions.
And K-comedies.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Not a lot of big anime news outside in between episodes. The moderate sad one of the passing of the Japanese voice actors who played Doraemon. She's well up there. She, I think, late 80s. So,
Oh my god, sorry to interrupt. I just remembered. I'm watching the new Dragon Ball show, Daima.
Oh, right. How is that?
It is completely removing Dragon Ball. It is taking place in an alternate timeline in which Super does not exist, because they both start right after the Buu saga. So far, it's been a lot more original Dragon Ball than Dragon Ball Z. It has that more sort of oddball comedy that Toriyama absolutely loved.
Honestly, the first episode felt almost like a recap show for half of it.
Yeah.
And then the villain declared that his grand plan was to turn everybody into children, and I was like, okay, I'm on board.
Just turn the people who
just do it.
Beat the guy who beat the previous Demon King into children so they won't be a threat.
Sure, why
it's
not?
like, okay.
Make everyone a kid.
It's weirdly low stakes, and it's...
You take the villain about as seriously as you take any of Toriyama's villains, I guess.
Well, like, Toriyama is, like,
Just
as a
weird
character
little guy.
designer, he was fantastic. He did do the character design, and I know he did the early plotting for this show, which was announced basically immediately before he died. So I do not know how much actual involvement he had in this production before he passed away. But it was supposed to be his big return to being like the showrunner more than just like the guy who does the general plot and you follow along. But yeah, very entertained by that first episode. I look forward to seeing more. I think the second episode came out the day we are recording this.
All right. Oh, one minor news thing worth bringing up. If you are in Canada, or if you have a VPN and are a Disney Plus subscriber, you can now stream Macross Flashback 2012, Macross 2, Macross 0, and Macross 7.
Yes!
Just do the last one.
Hey, the others...
Alright, Zero's not bad either.
Macross 2 is in continuity with the compilation movie Macross Do You Remember Love? Which, despite being a compilation movie, was, like, the majority of it was actually new animation.
Yeah.
With new character designs. And weirdly enough, they kept those character designs into Macross 7. Despite the fact that Do You Remember Love isn't in canon with 7.
Yeah, because Do You Remember Love is technically an in-universe movie.
Yes.
7 just has a special place in my heart.
7 is amazing. Where else are you going to find a rock band fighting space vampires in transforming robots with the power of music?
First move, shoot him with speakers.
Yes, that is Neki Basara's first move, is to shoot speakers into the enemy robots so they can hear his music.
Listen to my song!
If you're in Canada or if you have a VPN, you can now watch Macross 7.
Have fun with that, Canada.
So with that, we're going to time to get to our show for this month, Dark Gathering. So let's go! Dark Gathering. This started as a manga running in Jump Square, which is the monthly spin-off of Weekly Shonen Jump. So the manga is available in the Shonen Jump app. Alongside such manga as Blue Exorcist, Goku Rakugai, and Moriarty the Patriot, to give you an idea of its company. And the premise of the show, our main character is Kitaro Gentoga, who is a high school freshman who has spiritual powers that allow him to see spirits and be targeted by them. And at a point in the past, he and his childhood friend Eiko got in a situation, we don't have the full details of it, where they got cursed. And he's gotten a very significant fear of the supernatural, which causes a problem when Eiko ropes him into tutoring her younger cousin, Yayoi, who her parents were killed by her father was killed by some very malevolent spirit, and her mother kidnapped, taken by that spirit. And so she's out to get her mom back, and she's going to basically raise an army of ghosts to do so, deciding that for the things that go bump in the night, she's going to be the one that bumps back.
Fight ghost with ghost. Let them fight. Point of order, though. I thought Eiko and Kentaro were in college.
Yeah, they're in college now, but the curse incident happened. Yeah, they're college freshmen. The curse incident happened when they were significantly younger. When they were younger.
Yes.
Also, is it Yayoi or Yayoi? Because the dub kind of ping-ponged.
I think it's supposed to be Yayoi.
Yayoi. Okay.
But I will say that the character designer, everyone in this show is Pokemon trainer coded.
Oh my god, it's true.
And the fact that it's very basic, like, this would be so easy to just put into the Pokemon world, and Yayoi is collecting ghost-type Pokemon. There is...
We're not saying that the vibes are the same. But sometimes, in fact, the vibes were in such conflict with the character designs that I was thrown.
Yeah. I gotta say, the show, for me at least, did not start well. Like, if I hadn't been watching it for this, I probably wouldn't have lasted more than 3 or 4 episodes. But by the end, I was invested, and I want to see what happens.
Oh, it gets better as it goes, for sure.
Yeah. It is very clearly an adaptation in the fact that it's keeping things in that I don't know, because I did not read the manga. But things feel like they're following a manga order when they might have wanted to rearrange things to have a more cohesive flow to it. Because, yeah, as Tora said, it does ping pong a bit. And like, this is very relaxed. Oh no, this is incredibly high stakes. No, this is sort of relaxing. It's like, it didn't really build upon itself so much as it just took another step, and that's where you end up.
I don't know. It's interesting because if you look at horror in the context of entertainment, it's different things to different people. Obviously, everyone experiences media differently, and so horror hits at different levels depending on the person. The show felt like it was trying to kind of hit at all levels, in that there was like some suspense and tension and drama, but then there was also like straight out like freak you out body horror. There was some gore. They were able to try out a lot of different things in terms of like the ghosts and their designs. But I do feel like the tone was inconsistent in a weird way until kind of you hit the back half of the season, and then you were kind of locked in. What am I trying to say here? Sometimes it was too light, sometimes it was too heavy, and you felt the disjunct of that more heavily in the first part of the season.
Yeah, like I said, it needs to build upon itself. It can't be deep and then light and deep and light.
One of the things that came to my mind when I was watching the show this time, and having read the manga, but also I'm online, I'm on Tumblr, among other places, and one of the shows that popped to mind for me all of a sudden while I was watching the show for the podcast was Supernatural. Particularly like early seasons of Supernatural.
Yeah, I get that, actually.
Yeah.
Like, in the sense of, like, you have this kind of, in really early seasons, this bouncing back and forth where Supernatural is trying to do the horror movie of the episode. And some of those can be like very weighty on the horror side, and sometimes you have the episode where somebody accidentally summoned a malevolent spirit by painting the symbol for Blue Oyster Cult on a haunted house, or the logo of the Blue Oyster Cult logo on a haunted house.
They were just trying to rock, man.
Yeah, and
to the best of us.
And that, I feel like, is kind of what, to a certain degree, where this show runs into. I mean, they're not bombing around Japan in an Impala listening to classic rock music, but a lot of the things still apply in terms of they are hunting spirits. And with Supernatural, generally when you go for the stakes is, okay, the Winchesters are, unless this is like season finale time, The Winchesters are probably going to be okay. Sam and Dean are probably going to be fine. The people around them, maybe not so much, but Sam and Dean are probably okay.
God help you if you're a female hunter in that show.
Yeah. And so, yeah. And that's where kind of I got the vibes from this here is like, oh, our main three characters, because they are the core characters who are driving the series, are generally going to be, relatively speaking, okay. But
what new trauma will they experience?
Exactly.
I like that the three main characters come at it from three different places, right? Yayoi is very, like, workmanlike. She's got a job to do. She's on a mission. She's focused and serious most of the time. Eiko is a thrill seeker. And
straight up, she's there for the adrenaline.
And Kentaro is kind of reluctantly dragged into it until he makes, like, a decision like he's going to commit to it and try and help them out. So he's kind of going to help his friends out. And so they react to the things that happen very differently. Which is interesting to see. If I can get super academic for a moment here.
Go ahead.
I'm going to stop you.
Thanks. There's a famous book called The Philosophy of Horror by Noel Carroll. And he wrote about kind of the idea of horror as entertainment. And he referred to it as art horror. And his book focuses on two paradoxes of the heart, right? Which is the subtitle of the book. The paradox of fiction, which is why are people scared of things they know don't exist? And the paradox of horror itself, which is why does anyone like horror at all, since being scared is usually a bad thing? And he describes art horror as a combination of fear of the described menace, right, the monster, and revulsion at its presence. And the revulsion is usually a result of the monster or the creature or whatever crossing conceptual boundaries. The quote that I like about that is, what horrifies is that which is outside cultural categories and is perforce unknown. So if you put that into the context of the show, you have all of these different yokai, right? And Japanese horror kind of really leans into that outside cultural categories thing, but it also treats its ghosts especially more like mythology, in that they're an expected part of the world as opposed to disturbances of the natural order sometimes. And I really appreciate in this story how you have three protagonists with three different points of view toward horror, and the show is able to explore all of them. Like, Kentaro has a very rational fear of the supernatural, and you get to see him manifest that, but he fights through it in a courageous way. Eiko has the opposite. She has a love of art horror, and she loves the adrenaline rush of being scared, and that takes her herself into a place where she kind of crosses conceptual boundaries, and she becomes almost a horror character in some places, which the artist helpfully illustrates by giving her a really scary face. And then Yayoi is like a traditional protagonist on a revenge quest where she is monster hunting. Like, her entire story is, I'm going to hunt monsters to get this one monster in particular. And so you get to explore all of these different reactions to the art horror of the monsters that they've designed for the show. So as a weird nerd, I thought that was really cool. Like, I think it was really neat how they got to explore not only all these different types of monsters and ghosts, but the reactions of different types of people to those creatures. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. It also helps that, like, in an interesting sense, that a lot of the horror that comes up tends to be in the same way that, like, Supernatural will riff on existing ghost stories and that sort of things, the Woman in White and that sort of stuff. Like you have for in Dark Gathering, they, like, particularly some of the early episodes, they riff on either stories of existing haunted sites. I actually did some looking up, and some of the sites are based on real haunted locations in Japan, and also just ghost stories from pop culture and that sort of thing. Like in episode 5, it's the haunted tape. It's not quite the Ring tape, but
it's
it's not like you're going, all right, today I'm going to go hunt Samara or Sadako, but it's you can see how close you get from there.
It also mirrors reality in that a lot of these haunted sites they visit are specifically places of transition. A tunnel from one place to another, a graveyard where people are crossing from life into death, a waterfall. And, there's a reason we fixate on places like that in real life.
Yeah, and a lot of this is one of the shows where like the creator, probably the mangaka, you can really tell a lot about what issues the creator has through the art that they create.
There's mama drama.
There is so much related imagery for the spirits, the ghosts, related to motherhood, childbirth,
pregnancy,
and pregnancy. Like it.
Oh, you might almost say femininity in general.
I don't know if it's the femininity in general so much as it's motherhood in all of its stages.
That for sure.
Yeah.
I will say there are a lot of female ghosts in Japanese mythology that come up, or ghost stories. So like some of that certainly is like building off of existing traditions as well. I remember doing a review a while back on my blog of the movie of the Japanese horror film Kuroneko, which is female ghosts haunting a inn near one of the gates of Tokyo, for example. I think like, well, that comes while some of that may be particular things that have caught the attention of the writer. That's also probably grabbed hold of in a lot of traditional Japanese folk horror as well. I mean, one of the like big spirits that they mentioned that comes up over the course of the series, so it's the one who they visit fairly early on. The name just
the motherhood ghost.
Yeah, the motherhood ghost.
The baby ghost.
Yeah, that's like that's an actual spirit who has a shrine built to her in around Tokyo to placate a angry spirit.
This kind of fits into Noel Carroll's definition of a horror movie monster too, which is an extraordinary creature who partakes in cultural taboos, right? And that it is something that lies outside cultural categories and is therefore unknown. I would argue that there has always been horror around childbirth because...
Good reason.
It's horrifying. I say this as someone who has had a child. There's a lot about it that feels unknowable and unknown, even if we now understand the scientific processes by which it works.
Mm-hmm.
It's still like the number one killer of women across the world. So it's not surprising that it would pop up a lot in horror.
I'm not saying there's anything bad with it. I'm not saying that the depictions weren't really well done. I'm just saying it keeps coming back to that. Especially with the Death Spectre ghost, which is primarily viewed as an egg, a fertilized egg that has skeleton-topped sperm wriggling all around it, like the corona of a star.
Yeah, the imagery isn't subtle.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm saying. The imagery in this show there is no subtlety to it. Everything is exactly what it looks like.
Admittedly, a lot of horror has incredibly unsubtle imagery.
True facts.
What are you saying about H.R. Giger?
Yes,
I mean,
let's
I'll straight up say it. Alien is my favorite horror film, and it is so chock full of sexual imagery and sexual trauma that, yeah, it's chock full of it. I don't have a problem with that. I want to be clear, I don't.
Yeah. I think horror at its best has always been a way of grappling with the things that we fear, you know? And sometimes you have to do that, approach that obliquely through layers of metaphor, and sometimes you just slap a blatantly obvious visual metaphor down, and people can take it or leave it.
You'll let me leave it?
If you want. I know plenty of people who enjoy horror movies and don't care at all about like what the monster represents or if it represents anything, you know?
I know, but I'm not able to interact with my media non-critically anymore.
But yeah, I like that, you know, going into the show, the world is already populated with all of these spirits and ghosts, and they don't have to work very hard to find them. You know what I mean? They just...
We need to find a particular ghost. Okay. Aisle 7.
Several times I looked at David and I said, you could just drop this whole world right into Jujutsu Kaisen, and it fits. Like, they both have that very similar feeling that all of this horrifying stuff exists just out of sight all the time, constantly, everywhere.
I said it would probably fit better into Bleach, but yes.
Yeah. Again, it does help that a lot of these haunted sites are like based on actual sites that are
history happened.
I will say, like, the characters have very, very cartoony appearances, but the locations are they feel so real that you can really tell that this is a place where the creators went, they researched it, they saw this.
Yeah, the locations
like
very
gorgeous, and occasionally like the cartoonishness of the characters feels a little out of place, especially Yayoi and her toothed shoes.
Yeah, I mean, that said, like the toothed shoes feels like something feels like a kind of thing that would actually exist. I mean, we live in a world...
I don't doubt those shoes exist.
I mean, we live in a world where somebody said, "Hey, what if we put wheels on the heels of sneakers? Let's do that."
Hey, Heelys are great. Not a place I expected to be in a conversation on horror, but defending wheelies, or Heelys.
I was getting at a point there.
Ah.
that the horror stuff is everywhere. I found a quote from horror author Koji Suzuki, which I really liked, which he says that, "To me, blood and gore horror movies are for kids, but real fear has to stimulate the adult imagination. Japanese horror movies end with a suggestion that the evil spirit still remains at large, because the Japanese don't regard spirits only as enemies, but as beings that coexist with this world of ours." So yeah, these ghosts are just there. They're doing their thing all the time. Mm-hmm. And then instead of a monster forcibly inserting itself into the world of the characters are forcibly inserting themselves into the world of the supernatural, which I think is a really fun swap from what we normally get in American horror.
Yeah, particularly since, like, one of the things I came to appreciate when I was watching the opening credits is it kind of almost depicts Yayoi as the monster in a certain respect, and in terms like she's putting a lot of the framing that you traditionally see for a monster in a horror series, like the vampire's coffin and that sort of stuff, which makes sense because probably for like some of the minor ghosts, like the one ghost who was just minding its own business in the haunted phone booth, like she comes up and then kicks its butt and stuffs it into its stuffed animal.
I mean, you say minding its own business, it kept killing people.
But it was fixed to that location. It couldn't go out and hunt people, you know what I mean?
No, it just... A trapdoor spider doesn't go out and hunt. That doesn't make it any less of a killer.
So then the question is, in your worldview, does the ghost fit into the world like a trapdoor spider does, or is it something outside and aberrant that should be removed? So this is the kind of thing that I'm getting at, like the way you think about these phenomena.
Okay, that's very interesting. The way you phrase that is very interesting because, like, the trapdoor spider itself is a part of the nature world. It isn't something you go out and remove.
Unless you really hate spiders like I do.
We do not live in a place where there are trapdoor spiders.
Thank the gods.
Spiders we deal with are mostly wolf spiders in our area.
But I think it's interesting, Yayoi has no compunctions and no guilt about trapping these spirits, but she does show them compassion at times. And I'm not sure if it's because she has compassion for them or if she just thinks that is the easiest way to get them to do what she needs them to do. What do you guys think?
Yeah, that makes sense, because her reaction to the way she treats them, like, we get more of this with the graduates. We'll get more personality later. Like, her reaction is very variable to them. Like, the demon sergeant, she's very sympathetic for, and respectful to. He's a spirit that was not permitted to pass on through circumstances beyond his control. Relatively speaking, like he got sent to war and turned out to be good at it, and even though he didn't like being good at it, and the spirits of the people that he killed in war, didn't like that either. So everyone was kind of generally miserable and unhappy in that situation.
Yeah, it's one of those. It's another of the cases where a soldier of Imperial Japan is the most heroic person. It's the most heroic, and it's like, okay, we'll move on from this.
You can read it that way, sure.
Yeah, I did read it that way, but I also did get I don't know if you're familiar with the manga Onward to Our Noble Deaths. The vibe from that of it's manga from the creator of, for those who are listening who are familiar with it, creator of actually tying in nicely with the month, the creator of Gegege no Getaro, about his experiences during the Second World War, and basically being jerked around because he didn't die when he was supposed to, more or less. And so I definitely got a bit of that sense here with this character of that he, we don't know, that she never gets into why he was fighting for the Japanese army. A very reasonable possibility that he was just conscripted, drafted. But that and I appreciate that for the animation and also in the manga as well, while when his symbol forms, it has the Japanese flag, it's not the Imperial Japanese flag. It just has the rising sun. It doesn't have the sunbeams coming out of it. Mm-hmm. Which I think makes a significant difference there in terms of this character's perspective, worldview. And also that the demon sergeant does not feel proud about what he did.
Yeah.
And that, I think, makes it work.
I did not have a problem with the character.
I know it's important to bring up, though. It's this is a character where it's this could have absolutely gone the other way.
He was treated a lot more sympathetically than the courtesan graduate.
Yeah.
And I felt that her character was a little bit, I don't know, something about it rubbed me the wrong way, because we do get to see her backstory, and it is tragic, and, stuff happened to her that wasn't her fault. But she just goes full cuckoo crazy and wants to burn everything. Well, and I feel like women in horror usually get that treatment.
Yeah, it's, what happened to you? Oh, she went crazy. Okay, well, and can you tell us why?
Loss of beauty was involved, which is something that is also shunted onto women a lot. I don't know. There are some tropes there that I personally am not comfortable with. I did think the character was cool, though. And I thought her powers were super cool.
Yeah, her powers visually are really intense in of the visual flair of the three named graduates who we get to see their full range of power. It's we have like
Girls got a whole domain expansion.
yeah like the next one who's like closest is the High Priest of the Evil Sutra, and his just thing is more like, oh, like you can't stop the signal, Mal.
Yeah.
The brown note.
Yeah.
Keeps coming. Yeah, but the fights were really visually spectacular, I think. A lot of the time.
And none of them really went the same way, except
There was a lot of great
whenever
variety.
I think it was the Soul in Transition was involved, which was grab them, bite them, eat them.
Yeah.
And those were all real fast.
There's chomp ghosts. That's
Yeah,
the thing.
it's like, okay, that's it there.
Like I will bring up the mythological stuff in here. I do appreciate also like we got a nice little cameo appearance mention of Abe no Seimei in here as well.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're getting into the supernatural and historical Japan, you have to have Japan's Merlin pop up.
Premier practitioner of Onmudo.
Yep.
Which was state-recognized magic.
Boom. Japan's like that.
I mean,
So-
yeah, essentially.
Of the little story arcs and ghosts that we had so far, we've gotten so far, what were some of the ones that stood out to you the most? I really liked the like the whole thing with retrieving the graduate escort Odagiri. That whole episode was just really, really fun.
I'll tell you this, Alex. I am part Sicilian. Spaghetti and meatballs are my comfort food. And now I feel like meatballs are kind of ruined for me. Dang!
I will say my favorite, the one I felt was probably the most effective as a horror, and the one that probably tapped into more westerny horror tropes the most, old F Tunnel ghost. And that especially forcing the spirits of his victims to help him gather more victims.
Yeah, the whole thing with that, the girl that Aiko met.
Yeah.
And then what happens to her? Like...
Aiko turns her into a protective doll that will self-regenerate so it can take punishment over and over and over again.
Aiko's like, I can improve your spirit batteries.
It's like, I understand that she helped kill numerous people. But at some point, a punishment is just gratuitous.
This also kind of taps into that trope that I'm a little weirded out about, which is that
Girls turning on girls.
When women are subjected to trauma, they become horrifying monsters. Like,
Yeah. But
I'm not saying that doesn't work both ways. Okay, it's just a
saying I
trope
don't
that
like
I
it.
personally am a little weirded out by. Okay.
So what did you think of the Graduate House arc?
I thought that was a really fun change of pace, that it was just the ladies going in. There was a well in the house. I was like, oh no, creepy well, here we go.
apparently a dry well.
That's a terrible thing. And, all the pregnancy-related trauma, frankly, could have been worse. We did go see Alien Romulus recently. But oh man, yeah, that's straight tapped into like the core pregnancy trauma for me, which is that it happens to you and you're not in control, especially if you get pregnant by accident or by force, and it's freaking horrifying. It is like,
Which luckily is not what happened with us.
no. But even though I got pregnant on purpose, and I wanted that baby, and I love my baby, that feeling of your body doing something completely outside your control is wild. I don't know how to tell you guys, it's wild. So, yeah, I thought that was very effective. The backstory, horrifying.
Yeah. I appreciate the black comedy leading up to when they arrive at the house, where it's like, okay, we need a haunted house that we can stash these graduates in. Where's the place that's real cheap? Oh, this place is going for 100 yen. It's going for $1.
They really thought it all through, didn't they?
Not even $1.
The guy's like, are you sure you want it?
100 yen is like a dime.
I mean, I appreciate that they're being systematic about it. They're good planners.
Yeah.
Actually, this is something that also kind of breaks the horror movie tropes, is that the protagonists are actually decently good at planning. They're still kids throwing themselves into dangerous situations, but they're doing it with a very specific goal in mind.
And doing the research ahead of time.
Yeah, they think about it. They read things online and do the research on the way, and, you know, they even have strategies going into, like, what they assume are going to be fights. So that's nice, you know? They're very much aware of the danger that they're going to be in, and they plan for it. Things inevitably go off the rails anyway, because life is unpredictable, but I really appreciate that they thought about it. This is another consequence, I think, of the protagonists putting themselves forcibly into the world of the supernatural, as opposed to having their ordinary lives disrupted by a sudden emergence of the supernatural into it. But that's what it feels like when that gothic Lolita girl shows up. Yeah,
like that's a good place to move into the replaced characters, the ones who've been...
Which is a beautiful reversal, you know? You are, by that point in the show, you are expecting that they will go out and search for the supernatural and find it, but then the supernatural shows up at Yayoi's school. And I thought that was just a very cool, like, flicking it back on its head, unexpected to me. And David's like, wait, why are we suddenly getting, like, a cutesy school episode? And then you find out why.
Yeah. And, like, we got, and, like, it helps that the arc right before this, the arc, which was the arc for the Watergate ghost, that we'd gotten a previously possessed spiritualist, Nagiko Shami, who, like, she shows up, gets taken out almost immediately.
No, I just got this body!
Yeah.
And it introduces, like, oh, hey, people can be possessed by these spirits and taken over. And then we get that, we see this character, and then the very next arc, we, like, see the person pop up in this, like, oh, this person is very likely one of the people related to the society of these people who've been possessed by the spirits, and they're coming after Yayoi, particularly when we've also, like, we've been slowly seeing them off and on over the course of the show and having conversations, and that Yayoi has unintentionally interposed herself in their plans. So makes things very interesting from there.
Yeah. They spent all this time establishing that you can weaponize ghosts, right? And then when they introduce this, like, shadowy faction that is made of ghosts who are strengthening other ghosts for unknown purposes, and you're like, oh, of course she's not the first one to have thought of this. All of a sudden it just, like, really expands the scope of the story in a really interesting way. And we haven't even talked about that god yet.
Oh, yeah.
So that was introduced pretty early on, I feel like.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then kind of sat backburnered for a little while, and then...
No, I would say it, like, it wasn't at the forefront, but it was still, like, the cause, because the reason that Yayoi starts, you know, needing, like, I think she said she needed 6 graduates and she only had 3, was because she needed the power to fight this god.
Right. It accelerates her planning. And
yeah, it becomes
it's a catalyst.
the impetus.
Yeah. But the way it expands the world again when you're introduced to this character with the stars in her eyes and learn what's going on with her, it's like, oh, that is a thing that can also happen. And they keep referring to this entity as a god. It's unclear whether it is a god or just an insanely powerful spirit, or how they're defining God. Like, it seems like more of a Shinto animist reading to me, but I'm not sure. We were watching the dub with the subtitles on, so we didn't really get a lot of clarity on that. Was the word they were using kami?
Yeah, but I believe the word they're using was kami.
Yeah.
Which, while it does mean God, it is a different context than we usually think of in the West.
Different context.
It's more...
Because they also referred to that motherhood spirit with all of the child ghosts as a goddess, didn't they?
Yeah, and she is enshrined, like the actual in the really real world. There is actually a Shinto shrine to her.
Mm-hmm.
So
my understanding of Shinto animism is that the things of nature have spirits, and that the most powerful ones are referred to as gods, kami. Yeah. So very, very different meaning than we usually take for it here in the West. But regardless, it's a powerful entity. And then I loved the choice that the show made to give the god a little brief, I don't know if you would even call it a battle, an encounter with the embryonic spirit that Yayoi's been hunting.
Death Spectre!
And that, like, makes it evolve or something?
He's impressed by its power, even though it does not stand a chance and is defeated casually. And he's like, here, have I'll make you stronger. It's like, why? Why are you doing this? Why?
Well, I mean, he's obviously in everything for the lulz.
When you become ancient enough, you need to find some way to entertain yourself when you're not, dooming an entire bloodline every generation for a spouse that you spend the subsequent decades eating.
Yeah. Very interesting. Very creepy. And it also takes it into more of kind of a mythological folklore kind of direction. Like, if an ancestor of this girl made a deal with the god, like, for power, and in exchange, he'd basically get to eat a woman of the bloodline every generation or something. Like, I think I've heard a story like that somewhere. And even if I haven't, it sounds like it fits in.
Mm-hmm.
I love her plan that we don't get the full, like, we're kicking off the full version of it, because they've accumulated the spirits to the graduates to do this by the end of the season. But, like, okay, our plan is we're going to curse Kyoto.
Yes.
We're going to curse the entire city of Kyoto and direct that curse at the god.
Girl doesn't think small. You got to give her that.
Like, oh boy.
Really?
What did Kyoto do to you?
Now, they established that Yayoi is crazy smart, right?
Yeah.
But, I mean, essentially, she's figuring out all this supernatural stuff as she goes. So I'm interested to see if her plan will work.
But yeah, like, this is definitely of the sort of three horror and horror adjacent of the horror and horror adjacent things we've done so far. Boogie Pop, Vampire Hunter D, and this. This is definitely the most actual horror in a lot of respects.
Mm-hmm. Very, very different from the gothic horror of Vampire Hunter D.
Are we going to do the supernatural anime next year?
Supernatural?
There is a supernatural anime.
Yes.
I'm surprised.
The main reason we're not doing the supernatural, probably won't be doing the supernatural anime, is I believe it is spectacularly out of print.
Also, from what I hear, not very good.
Yeah, I mean, I will admit that as I've watched some of it, I did not finish it. I will definitely say that, yeah, it's not great. But also, like there's some value in watching things that aren't great, but are
absolutely,
but are worth having a conversation about. But the problem is getting a hold of them. And that's like library probably has it. Well, libraries probably have it, but it's otherwise tricky to get a hold. Very tricky to get a hold of.
I liked Start Gathering a lot, but it ended on a cliffhanger, man.
I wouldn't say it ended on a cliffhanger. I would say it's ready to start its next season.
But
I don't really think
that happened.
I won't say that it ended. I will say it stopped.
It stopped.
Yeah, it is definitely an example of a read the manga ending, with the implication of, and we will pick this show up once we have enough for a good season of the manga. Which honestly, of the ways that anime has adapted long running shonen properties in the past, I would rather this to a certain degree than endless filler. I don't want to know what the Dark Gathering filler arc would look like.
Indeed.
I actually do want filler arcs, and I want it to just be like normal slice of life. So that every time something horrifying does happen, you're like, oh god, right, that's what this show is about. Not whether or not Keitaro is making friends in his college classes and, going on dates with Eiko.
That's because we both just love uncomplicated slice of life shows.
It's so fun. But also, I enjoy that juxtaposition of normal life and the otherworldly.
That's another thing I like about it, is how the normal life starts getting pushed out more and more by the end of the series.
Oh,
yeah.
And before you know it.
Like particularly in, with the introduction of Dorothy later, where we get a snippet of Yayui's normal school life before Dorothy upends it.
Mm-hmm.
I do appreciate
all these cute little normal classmates, and you're like, oh no.
I do appreciate the unintended consequences of this also, of like where like if they hadn't done anything, Yayoi would be very limited in how much she could do, because Golden Week's over and she has to actually go to school. But now, school's closed for an indefinite period of time because everybody passed out for some mysterious reason. And so now she's got time to accelerate her plan.
When this happened in Fate, they labeled it a gas leak, right?
Yes, they did.
Sometimes you just got to make everyone on campus fall asleep so you can get some time off.
Just gotta do it.
But yeah, I enjoyed reading the manga before watching the show. That was part of the reason why I decided to do that, to pick the show. I was like, oh, I've read the manga, I really like it. There's an anime show. Halloween's coming up. Let's do it.
Yeah, I will say I enjoyed it.
So yeah, this is if you missed the notification from last episode, it is streaming on Hidive. I believe it has also received a physical Blu-ray release, since Hidive, Sentai Filmworks is generally pretty good about that.
It's also on, I want to say we watched it on Hulu.
Yeah.
They've also Hidive's also been pretty good about kind of cross-pollinating their stuff across other services. They've got Amazon channel now. It's on Hulu, possibly. I don't know if this carries over to Canada, so I don't know if it's on Disney Plus in Canada. It's on Apple TV. Because Canada doesn't have Hulu, they just have Disney Plus and Star. So, like, absolutely worth picking up, and also it's absolutely worth the subscription to the Shonen Jump app to read it. Especially since subscription's like $3, $4. Practically pays for itself. Not quite at full on, not quite as cheap as, not quite as pays for itself as it used to, when getting a subscription to Shonen Jump got you free Yu-Gi-Oh cards, which you could then flip. But yeah.
I still have so many of those Yu-Gi-Oh cards.
So next month, once again, it is Nasuvember, and since we finished the iffy, let's just say, adaptation of Tsukehime, probably the one. It's not. It's not to say it's the one bad thing we've watched, because it's all right, but it's the worst thing we've watched so far.
It was a little meh.
It suffered from trying to do too much in too little time.
Indeed. But now we have something where they have a bit more time to work on things. So we're going to be doing, and we're going to just do a little bit of business on air, because next up to discuss is Garden of Sinners. Now this is a series of like 7 movies. We're not going to do them all in 1 month, because that would be mean. So
Hey, we have other things to do with our time besides watch anime. Not that we wouldn't love to just watch anime, but yeah.
But yeah,
lives,
like this
jobs.
Also,
children.
also we're getting into holiday season stuff, so travel gets so we've got holiday, and I have convention, and I have convention in November with KimuraCon.
What?
So
an anime convention?
You don't say.
Do we want to do the first 2 or first like 3 movies?
I think we could definitely get 3 out.
Okay, so we'll be covering the first 3 Garden of Sinners movies, which I'm going to double check and make sure that they're still available. But I believe they are on Crunchyroll.
They were last time I checked.
Okay.
Last time we watched.
So tell me, chronologically, would this come after Tsukihime in terms of Nasu's works, or
no,
is it after Fate?
This is this
Recent?
took place this was before. This was originally written as like light novels.
Okay.
Yep.
Before Type Moon.
Yep. So they are all okay. Actually, we have there's like the 7 main movies, and then there's 3 epilogue movies, which we will cover in due time as well. So we have plenty of time for covering things.
3 whole movies for epilogue. Wow.
So yeah, we'll be covering the first 3 films: Overlooking View, Murder Speculation Part A, and Remaining Sense of Pain. And they're not very long movies. Like, one's about an hour. Like, they're all about an hour each. Like, they're basically short films. We don't get like a full feature length 2-hour 90/90 minute film until part 5. So this is something where you could where for those listening along at home, this is something knock it out in about a weekend or 2.
Worth noting, and we should discuss this. What order are we watching these in?
So we are watching them in the order that they are on Crunchyroll.
Okay.
So it has episodes 1, 2, and 3, which I believe is also the order in which the films were released originally, and the novels were also published. Because the novels, and we'll get into this next time, the timeline of the internal narrative is not the same as the timeline of release.
That's why I asked, because, were we wanting to watch in release order, or are we wanting to watch in narrative order?
The age-old question, publication order versus narrative order.
And in this case, we're going to go with publication order on this.
So be it.
To see the story as it was intended to be consumed.
Yes.
So be it.
Because this is definitely one that's just like, as opposed to like, do a later series example, Haruhi Suzumiya, where like that show got, while it aired achronologically, when it ultimately came to home video release both in the US and Japan, they did release it chronologically. So there is a 6 1/2 dozen of the other way for release order here. Whereas in this instance, the novels were published achronologically, and significantly later, when Nasu worked with and Type Moon worked with Ufotable for the animated adaptations, they also released them achronologically. So this is apps, and also they've kept it that way on Crunchyroll. That definitely feels like this is very much how Nasu wanted this story to be told.
All right. Well.
And we'll get more into that next month. So in the meantime, if you enjoyed this podcast, please consider backing my Patreon at patreon.com/count0or. Patreon backers get access to edited versions of my Let's Play streams, and this podcast, and my video essays, and all sorts of other wonderful stuff up to 1 week in advance. And if the whole monthly thing doesn't really work for you, that doesn't fit your budget, just want to toss a couple bucks here and there, you can chip in on my Ko-fi account at ko-fi.com/count0. That either one works. Your support is great.
If you have questions.
Yep, and yes, you can email us if you have any questions, feedback about any of the shows we have discussed so far, honestly, at animeexplorationspod@gmail.com. All right, so until next month, you all have a good evening.
Happy Halloween!